Hey class, my name is Arad Baharmast, and I'm going to talk to you today about my research project that I've been conducting over the last quarter. My project looked at Nike, Adidas, and the way they use their Twitter accounts. When we're looking at Nike and Adidas, when I'm talking about the Twitter account, I'm speaking solely to the actual Nike and Adidas Twitter accounts, not taking into account Nike basketball or things like the Nike store, also not taking in things like Adidas streetwear or Adidas soccer, things like that. This is solely the brand representative Twitter account names that I look at. And essentially, my goal with this project was to just realize and understand the different ways that these two really popular sports apparel brands and just athletic wear brands in general use these Twitter accounts to kind of keep up with the modern times of communicating with their consumer base. Because things have changed, we're looking at things like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all these things coming into play as new communication platforms, social media sites that are all basically changing the way we communicate, not only with one another on an interpersonal level, but also changing the way we communicate with brands, companies, the way we look at products, the way we're being advertised towards. All of that is shifting, as has the technology and communication mediums that have come along throughout the past years, even since before 2006, since Twitter's introduction of 2006, there's been social media, and that change has really been rolling and moving along as we've been moving along. So I thought it was interesting and important to realize how the popular brands of our times use these accounts on these social media platforms, especially Twitter in the case of my research project, and see really what the different things are that they're doing with these. If they're trying to build new consumers, if they're trying to promote current products, if they're trying to play off of already built relationships with the brand, things like that. And so this research project basically covers all that and looks at that and gives a good discussion on what these companies are really using their Twitter accounts for. So the research question that I looked at is how are the different ways that Nike and Adidas utilize their Twitter accounts, and that's the project. That's the research question that guided my project. In this project, I talked about the items of brand love, brand management, identification, product promotion, as well as consumer interaction. So those were the five pieces that I looked at. Those were the five frames that guided my rubric, and those are the five frames that guided my research. Uh, just a quick overview of my methodology first, and then I'll get into the topics, and we'll just kind of see exactly what I did. For my collection of my data, I used the snapshot feature or the screenshot feature on my MacBook, and with that, I was able to just capture each individual piece of Twitter activity put out by the respective brands, Nike and Adidas. Took those and I filed them into folders for Nike and Adidas, based only on what brand had produced that piece of material. After I collected all the data over a 2 week period of time, I then went in and separated it into the respective frames of brand love, brand management, identification, consumer interaction, and product promotion. So that's the second step I took after generating all the samples. The reason I screenshotted these samples was because I felt that that was the best way to have solid samples to refer back to come time to look at the results or discussion section. My apologies. The discussion section was built so that I can refer back to these tweets and have more than just a simple tally of where each or each sample had fallen. Once I took all the screenshots, separated them out into the Nike Adidas folders, and then redistributed them out into the frame folders, that is when I was able to actually look at all the different content that was being put out by these brands and perform my analysis on that. So that was my methodology. That's what I did as far as collecting the research and putting it and tallying it into my rubric. Now we're going to talk about the concepts that I looked at, which were brand love, brand management, as well as identification and product promotion. So we'll start off with brand love. Brand love is essentially talking about this concept that you're a fan of the brand that you're wearing, you're a fan of a certain brand, and you have that relationship with them. Not necessarily an intimate, erotic sort of love, but this is where we're talking more of like a parasocial almost love, in the sense that this is where you have that connection to not really someone or something in particular, but just the brand itself. Me personally, I'm a huge fan of Nike, always been, and I'll probably always will be. I've always been using their products for actual sport as well as casual wear, shoes, all that stuff. I buy into it. I like it. I like the brand. So I have a brand love relationship with that to the point that Nike could almost play off that in their Twitter material by presenting items that they know their brand fans will love just because the brand is Nike. So they keep updating and things like that. Same thing, you can have that relationship with Adidas. That people just love Adidas. They have that relationship with Adidas, and therefore Adidas is their brand, and they have a love for that brand. That is the concept of brand love. That really you have that one-on-one connection with the brand as you would with somebody of this significant or a significant other, etc. So interesting concept to look at. Very interesting for this because Adidas did utilize the brand love frame multiple times throughout their activity over the 2 week span of time. The other concept is brand management, and this really can be anything as well. Brand management can be anything that the brands do on their accounts. They kind of manage them as a whole. That really puts out a perception or what they want to communicate to the consumers through that piece of material. So Adidas putting out certain things that or retweeting things that shows they have a diverse collection, that shows they're involved in all sport, it shows they're involved in streetwear. That's managing their brand. They're showing you that they have something for everyone. Everyone can fit into their brand, everyone can purchase their brand, everyone can have something that fits their lifestyle from that brand. And so Adidas did a very good job of doing so with the brand management. Looking at identification, this is where they'll play off of an identity of their consumer. So they'll promote something specifically for running, for example. In one of the tweets I collected, they did say, they were referring to runners and get into your inner runner, your running spirit, things like that. That's things that runners can all identify with because they understand that feeling, they understand that concept. Just as for me, if they were saying something about baseball or soccer, then I would be able to identify with that, and that could push me towards their brand more. So that would be identification. The next thing would be product promotion, which is very self-explanatory actually. Obviously, it's promoting of the product. So this is what a lot of the material is put out by, especially Adidas in my situation. But they put out a lot of things displaying different shoes, different types of wear, different active wear, different running products, different swimming products, things like that. So anything like that was put in the product promotion place. And then the other thing is consumer interactions, which is something very cool that you don't get to see on very many communication platforms because not every communication platform has a chance for the consumer to directly interact with the company presenting them with information. Obviously on Twitter you have things like the hashtag, and you can tag people and tweet at certain people. Thus you can tweet at Adidas and then end it off with a hashtag of classic three stripes, for example, just to kind of tie in what you're talking about in that tweet. So, Twitter has become a tool for companies to be able to use that and really kind of interact with their consumers, maybe get an idea of what they want, or to boost the hype of what they're putting out. For example, through my observation period, they were going to release a shoe at the end of about the month that I was observing of May. Now, with that, they at the beginning put out, if you want more information, we have to get those hashtags up. So they hashtag their tag for that shoe. I believe it was a Hyper Boost or something along those lines. So you add that hashtag, and then they were able to get some sort of trending going for their brand, for their company, and for their product that they're putting out. After doing so, after they received their desired outcome from the consumers, they were then putting out tweets that put out information regarding that shoe that they had promised. Now the interesting thing about these samples is that not everything is going to be looked at the same. Meaning each one can fall into different frames, and I took that into account when doing my research. However, I wanted to keep it a little separate. So what I did was I did the initial, what would be perceived by most, and what was most blatant. Then I also looked at them again, the samples, and I distributed them into a folder that worked for multi-frame. So this is one that I think could have fit very easily into multiple frames. I just selected one earlier because it was more prevalent and more obvious. This is one point that I really picked up in my discussion, is that each sample can fit into different frames with really no issue because everyone receives messages differently, everyone decodes messages differently, especially in the form of Twitter, especially on the material put out by these brands. Some of them not directly related to products, played off of things like brand management. They also did a sort of agenda setting with their stuff. For example, Nike and Adidas used their 30 days out from the World Cup, and they each posted something regarding that. They're both heavy sponsors for that event, so obviously they would want fans of their brand and fans worldwide to be participating and watching the event, which is the World Cup. They'll witness a lot of sponsorship ads in that, and we know that to be true, especially when they're sponsoring events. We'll see their signs and their logos all around the stadiums. So, smart on their part to set that kind of an agenda on the broad end, and that's what I spoke about in my discussion aspect. As far as my results go that I gathered, very interesting that Nike only actually put out 5 tweets in this 2 week period of time. Very interesting, way lower than I was assuming. When looking at Adidas, however, they produced 59 items or 59 samples in this 2 week period of time. These samples included original samples for Adidas, but they also used the retweet feature on Twitter to a high level because they were able to retweet things from Adidas Soccer, retweet things from Adidas Basketball, retweet things from Adidas Originals, things that they were able to take from more specific branches of their brand and put it all in their continuous feed for anyone who's a fan of their name as a whole. So if you're just following Adidas, for example, you'd be getting looks and access at things of Adidas Originals and Adidas Basketball, Adidas Soccer, so on and so forth. And that was really good of Adidas to do because essentially they're giving you all of their material for all of their brand, all of everything they have to offer, and they're giving it to you on one. While Nike, on the other hand, they weren't so good because they only produced 5. They weren't really keeping up with it. They do have the same associate Twitter accounts, such as Adidas, where you have Nike Soccer, Nike Basketball, etc. But they didn't utilize the retweet. They didn't do things like use hashtags for their consumers to follow. So Nike was rather weak in their Twitter use because they just didn't use it to its full potential. They didn't use all the features. They didn't use the frequency that they're able to use. And like Adidas with their 59, close to 60 tweets, they were able to use and they did it effectively. Essentially, I realized that what these brands are using their Twitter most for is brand management. Brand management was one of the ones that we saw from Nike and Adidas. It had a high number in both, and that's why we can see that brand management was really kind of the key player. Obviously, they used them in different ways. Adidas was spread across the board. They used it for brand love. They used it for brand management. They used it for identification. They used it for product promotion, and they used it for consumer interaction. Of that, the highest were obviously product promotion for Adidas, but they also did a high number in the brand management category, where they were essentially putting out things that they thought would better their brand to the consumer base and expand their brand to other consumers of different consumer bases. So I did find answers to the questions I was looking for as far as how well Adidas and Nike use their Twitter accounts and what are the different ways they do so. Nike showed me that they don't use it in very many different ways. They only fell in 2 categories of my rubric as I was sorting it out. So they left 3 untouched, meaning they're not using it in many different ways. They're only using it, mainly used it for identification and brand management. Adidas, on the other hand, used it from left to right. They were in all categories with the concentration of it being in brand management and product promotion. Obviously, Twitter is a great tool to promote your product. It's continuous, it's frequent. You are allowed to give quick description, brief picture, as well as give us link to give more detail to the consumer. So Adidas and Nike use their Twitter in many different ways. One obviously uses it better than the other. The better one being Adidas. The one using it not so greatly would be Nike, as found in my observation period of the 2 week span. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you understood exactly what I did. If you have any questions, feel free to forward them my way. I'd be happy to answer anything you have for me. Thank you for your attention, and have a great rest of your day.